Chosen one, they left you to die, but God didn't. They thought it was over for you. They truly believed they had buried your potential, silenced your voice, and broken your spirit for good. You were left in a dark place, abandoned by those who once stood beside you, ignored by the very people you once lifted up. But something they didn't account for, something they never saw coming, was divine protection. They left you to die, but God didn't. The story they wrote for you ended in ashes, but the one God is writing begins in fire. This video is for every chosen one who has ever been discarded, forgotten, underestimated, or betrayed. Stay with this message until the very end. It was made with intention, crafted with truth, and spoken with power. If it touches something deep in your soul, if it reminds you that you were never alone, even in your darkest moments, then share your warmest wishes in the comments and type 99 to let the universe know you're still standing and your light is still burning. This is a chapter about wishes coming true and energizing the universe. But beyond the wish, this is about something stronger. This is about survival, rebirth, and purpose. They saw your struggle and mistook it for weakness. They witnessed your tears and called it defeat. But what they didn't understand is that the pain you endured was preparing you for a level they couldn't even imagine. You were never meant to stay in the pit they left you in. That place was temporary. It was part of the process, not the end. Every scar you carry is a seal of survival. Every silence you endured was a preparation for the voice you're about to unleash. The silence didn't kill you. It built a storm inside you. You were called into isolation, not to be punished, but to be purified. The fire wasn't meant to destroy you. It was sent to refine you. And those who left you, those who mocked you, they didn't realize they were stepping out of a front row seat to a miracle, because God kept breathing on you when no one else did. God kept whispering truth into your soul when the world screamed lies. You kept waking up even when you didn't want to. You kept moving even when your strength was gone. And now the tide is turning. You see, they left you at your lowest, thinking it was your final form. But elevation was written into your bones. There's something about you that couldn't be killed. Not by betrayal, not by silence, not even by despair. There is something divine, resilient, eternal about your spirit. You are not what they called you. You are not what they thought you'd become. You are not the version of you that their ignorance painted. You are the chosen one, reborn. And here's the truth. When you carry purpose, you become a threat to people who have none. When you carry light, you irritate those still stuck in darkness. When you're chosen, even your silence makes noise. They didn't leave you because you were broken. They left you because you were too whole for their small world. You didn't fit in because you were born to stand out. And every rejection, every abandonment, every moment of "why me?" was a redirection. The divine didn't forget you. You were being positioned. There's a moment in the journey when everything is stripped away, not as punishment, but as preparation. And that's the part they don't see. They see your setback, not your setup. They see your pause, not your process. But what's about to rise from your ashes is beyond comprehension. You don't need revenge. You don't need them to come back and validate your worth. The breakthrough itself will be the loudest declaration. The elevation will speak for itself. What's coming for you is undeniable. This is your time of recovery. This is the sacred space where you heal in places they tried to wound permanently. This is your internal awakening, not for applause, not for them to see, but for you to remember who you are. The version of you rising now is not one they ever met. The new you doesn't need validation, doesn't chase approval, and certainly doesn't wait for those who turned their back. The new you is rooted in something higher, anchored, unshakable. The people who left you did you a favor, because now you know who's real. Now you've seen the true faces behind the smiles. Now you are surrounded by truth, not convenience. Now you walk with clarity, not confusion. You don't beg to belong anymore. You walk with purpose and know that the right ones will recognize your worth without you needing to shrink. You don't chase, they follow. You don't explain, they understand. And those who don't were never meant to stay. So remember this: your rejection was your redirection. Your breakdown was your breakthrough in disguise. They thought they ended you, but they didn't know that your story had divine authorship. What they buried was a seed, and that seed is breaking through the ground with force. You are no longer who they left. You are who you were always destined to become. You're about to rise in full view, not to prove anything, but to fulfill everything. What's yours is being released, not earned, not negotiated, released, because it was always meant for you. And no betrayal, no abandonment, no rejection could change that. The pain didn't cancel your purpose, it revealed it. What once looked like punishment was protection. What felt like the end was simply the beginning. The divine has been patient with your pain. Every unanswered prayer was a preparation. Every closed door was a blessing. Every detour was a divine map. And now you walk with something unteachable: experience, depth, vision. You've walked through hell and didn't lose your soul. You've wept in silence and still kept your heart open. You've held on to hope when hope didn't hold on to you. That's power. That's divine resilience. That's who you are. You were never abandoned. You were appointed, chosen not just to survive, but to lead, to shine, to break generational patterns, to elevate in silence and return in glory. You were forged in fire, not destroyed by it. The same place they left you in is now the very ground you will rise from. Stronger, louder, brighter, and this is only the beginning. They didn't understand what they walked away from. When they left you, they thought they were leaving behind a lifeless shell, someone who wouldn't make it without their validation, their support, their presence. But what they actually did was unlock something sacred within you. Their absence removed the fog from your mind. Their silence forced you to listen to your own voice again. Their betrayal sharpened your intuition. And their rejection realigned you with your original calling. They didn't know it, but they blessed you by leaving. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. You stopped looking for answers from people who couldn't even understand your questions. You stopped shrinking yourself just to make others comfortable. You stopped seeking peace from the same people who disturbed your spirit. And in the stillness, you found your center. You found your clarity. You discovered the part of you that they could never reach. The core, the source, the warrior. This part of your life isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. You're not here to impress. You're here to rise. They called it over, but this is your resurrection moment. The truth is, when you're chosen, you often have to walk alone before you can walk ahead. Isolation is part of the transformation. Not everyone is meant to come with you into your next chapter. Some people were only characters in the first few pages, background voices. And now that you're stepping into your main role, those who couldn't see your light can no longer dim it. You no longer carry the weight of other people's projections. You've dropped the shame. You've released the guilt. You're not carrying stories that don't belong to you. You've stopped trying to convince those who don't believe in miracles that you are one. You've stopped explaining your calling to those who don't even understand themselves. And now, you walk differently. You speak with power. You move with purpose. You're no longer waiting for permission. You've already been approved. They left because they couldn't comprehend the depth of your becoming. They were blinded by the surface. But what's been happening within you, what's been birthing silently in your spirit, was never meant for shallow eyes. You are becoming something they can't define. That's why they feared it. That's why they fled. People often leave when they sense a shift they're not ready for. But you were always ready. You just had to remember. The version of you they walked away from doesn't exist anymore. That you was built on compromise, fear, and survival. But this you is rising from truth, from power, from peace. And now, you're no longer triggered by their distance. You're grateful for the space. It gave you room to expand, room to breathe, room to finally become. Because you were never meant to remain a prisoner to their limited view of who you are. You were meant to outgrow it all. They thought they broke you, but they didn't know that every time you were shattered, a stronger version of you was assembling in the background. You're not the same person. Your silence now holds more power than your past screams. Your stillness is sacred. Your presence speaks louder than their absence ever did. You don't need closure. You've closed the door yourself. You don't need an apology. You've already healed. You don't need their love. You've found something deeper: wholeness. This is a spiritual return, a return to the source, to the truth, to the knowing that you were always enough, even in your brokenness, especially in your brokenness. That's where the gold was. That's where the foundation was rebuilt. Not on appearances, not on pretense, but on reality, on rawness, on something eternal. You didn't just survive. Something greater happened. You awakened. And when the chosen awaken, the world begins to tremble. Systems are challenged. Lies collapse. Patterns break. Because someone who has walked through fire and come out with light is unstoppable. You don't walk the same path as before. You blaze a new one. Your pain birthed power. Your wounds became wisdom. And now, everything they thought would destroy you is fueling your next move. You don't operate in the same dimension anymore. While others still chase applause, you chase alignment. While others seek revenge, you seek evolution. You know who you are now, and that knowing can't be undone. The experiences that broke others built you. The abandonment that silenced others made your voice louder. The seasons that caused others to fold became the very proving grounds of your strength. You have been initiated by fire, baptized by solitude, forged in shadows, and now you stand in the light, not because you searched for it, but because you became it. You shine, not to be seen, but because that's what happens when truth lives in your bones. That's what happens when you stop living for people who left you and start living for the purpose that never did. They left, but the vision remained. They left, but the promise stood. They left, but your spirit never collapsed. Because what holds you isn't earthly. It isn't temporary. It isn't conditional. You are held by something ancient, something holy, something immovable. That's why you couldn't give up. That's why you couldn't stay down. That's why, despite everything, you're still here, breathing, healing, rising. This is your moment to remember what they tried to make you forget. You are chosen, not because you're perfect, not because you're loud, but because you were called. You were destined. You were designed for this. And even though they walked away, the hand of God never did. You were preserved in private, so you could shine in public. You were hidden so your roots could grow deep. And now, the fruit is about to be seen by all. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. None of it matters anymore. What matters is that you know the truth now. What matters is that your journey, every part of it, has made you unshakable. And this next chapter is not about revenge. It's about radiance. You're not returning to prove a point. You're returning to fulfill a prophecy. You were never the victim. You were the vessel. They counted you out because they couldn't calculate your calling. They misread the silence, misjudged the stillness, misunderstood the retreat. They saw your quiet season as defeat, but they didn't realize you were in development. While they gossiped, you grew. While they mocked, you mastered yourself. While they slept on your value, you were rising quietly, building privately, healing deeply. Because that's what the chosen do. When the noise dies down, the true work begins. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. The pain was not the end. It was the beginning. And in the midst of the confusion and heartbreak, a deeper truth was forming inside of you. You learned how to walk alone, how to stand when everything was shaking, how to speak life into yourself when no one else was speaking anything at all. You became your own source of strength, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. And in that necessity, a fire was born. They never thought you'd make it past the breakdown. They assumed the tears would flood your progress. But what they failed to see is that endurance was written into your soul. Persistence was already in your DNA. You don't stop. You don't settle. You don't stay broken. You rebuild, stronger, wiser, deeper. You don't come back the same. You return, reborn. You started to realize that not everyone is equipped to handle your energy, that some people can't comprehend your journey, and that's okay. Their departure was never about your worth. It was about their capacity. And that's where the true power lives, in understanding that their absence didn't reduce your value. It revealed your value. The fact that they couldn't stay was the proof that your future had outgrown their presence. Every no became sacred. Every locked door became holy. Every delay became a divine appointment. You weren't being left behind. You were being rerouted. God was clearing the room, removing the unnecessary, detaching what couldn't go forward. You were being cleansed of clutter, spiritually, emotionally, relationally. Because where you're headed, you can't carry what was killing you. And that includes the people who only knew how to take, not give. You've learned what it means to be whole again. Not because someone healed you, but because you walked through the fire, faced yourself, forgave what hurt you, and chose to live anyway. You didn't stay bitter. You didn't turn cold. You didn't become like them. That's power. That's divine alignment. That's your legacy being written in real time. And the most powerful part? You're still soft. You still love. You still hope. You still believe. That's not weakness. That's strength they can't comprehend. After all the lies, all the betrayal, all the distance, you didn't become bitter. You became better. You became aware. You learned how to discern. You stopped asking for clarity from people committed to confusion. You now walk with vision. You move with purpose. You speak with clarity. And everything about you has shifted. The world around you might not notice at first, but that doesn't matter. The elevation is internal before it ever becomes external. Something inside of you has changed, and once that switch flips, you never go back. You don't beg anymore. You don't chase. You attract. You command with silence. You radiate with stillness. You no longer need validation. because your journey became your certificate. You've earned the right to walk in confidence, not because life was easy, but because you never gave up. You've become the kind of person who no longer needs to explain. You just exist, and your presence alone says everything. It says, "I've been through it, and I'm still standing." It says, "I know who I am now, and I don't need to shrink to be loved." It says, "The people who left me helped build the person they could never return to." That's the part they won't tell you, that sometimes their leaving is what saves you, that the heartbreak was the very thing that opened your eyes, that the disappointment was divine intervention. It didn't destroy you. It exposed what needed to be healed. And in that healing, you found your true self, the one who doesn't need the room to clap in order to know they're powerful. You're no longer moved by shallow emotions. You're rooted in something deeper. You no longer react. You respond. You no longer panic. You plan. You don't chase attention. You attract respect. You've outgrown the noise. You've matured beyond the need to be understood by people who never tried to listen in the first place. What you've gained in the quiet is priceless. Peace, discernment, self-trust, a relationship with the divine that no one can interrupt. You don't fold anymore. You've become grounded, secure, steady. And even though the storm came, it didn't take you, because the storm wasn't meant to drown you. It was sent to cleanse you. And now, you are walking into your next chapter, purified and prepared. You have graduated from survival. You're now in the realm of significance. Everything ahead is designed for your growth. Every opportunity will match your energy. Every connection will reflect your depth. You've cleared the karmic lessons. You've broken generational cycles. You're the beginning of something new, and you'll start to notice something strange. They'll come back, the ones who left, the ones who doubted. They'll reappear, curious, amazed, confused. They'll want to reconnect, but not because they've changed, because you have. Because they see something they didn't see before. But here's your power. You no longer need them. You've already moved on. You've already healed. You've already stepped into something bigger. And that's how the chosen rise, not with vengeance, not with bitterness, but with quiet victory. You rise with grace. You rise with authority. You rise with light so powerful, it silences every lie ever told about you. You don't fight for a seat anymore. You build the table. You don't scream to be heard. You whisper, and the world listens. What's coming can't be stopped. Because you were chosen, not just for survival, but for ascension. You've arrived at a moment that no one expected, not even you. There was a time you couldn't see past the pain, a time when breathing felt like a burden, and hope felt like a lie. But now you can look back and see it, all of it. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every long night that seemed to stretch into eternity. It all shaped the foundation you're standing on now. You didn't just make it through, you transformed in the fire. You became more than they ever imagined, and not because you had something to prove, but because purpose called your name louder than your pain did. Something sacred refused to let you go. You had every reason to quit, but you didn't. You had every excuse to fold, but you rose. And that alone is proof. You're built different. You're not ordinary. You've been marked by something eternal. They may never admit it, but they're watching now. They see the glow. They hear the strength in your voice. They feel the shift in your energy. You no longer apologize for existing. You no longer beg to be seen. You walk with the quiet, knowing that your presence is enough. Your truth is enough. Your journey is enough. And the power you carry isn't loud. It's undeniable. Because there's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It simply walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere. That's what you've become. A force, a quiet storm. A living reminder that survival isn't the end. It's the beginning of something far more extraordinary. You are the proof that being left behind doesn't mean being left out. That those who walked away weren't your ending. They were just the beginning of your becoming. You don't carry resentment, you carry revelation. You've learned that peace is more valuable than proximity, that your energy is sacred, that access to your heart is a privilege, not a guarantee. You've learned that closure doesn't come from others, it comes from within. And you've mastered the art of releasing what doesn't serve your becoming. They don't know what it cost you to still be here. They see the outside, but missed the inner wars. The nights you questioned everything. The mornings you barely made it out of bed. The days you wore a smile just to survive. They didn't witness the moments you prayed not for success, but for strength. The moments when just getting through the hour was your only goal. But the divine did. And that's why grace found you. You were being watched over when you didn't even believe in yourself. Protected when you felt exposed. Carried when you couldn't walk. And now, you've stepped into a season where everything broken is being restored. Every delay is becoming a demonstration. Every tear is being translated into wisdom. Every loss is making room for abundance. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about showing off. This is about alignment, about finally stepping into the frequency of who you were always meant to be. You're no longer chasing, you're magnetizing. You're no longer doubting, you're walking in authority. You've become your own rescue, your own peace, your own sanctuary. And in doing so, you've made space for divine intervention to accelerate everything. Opportunities are coming not because you chased them, but because you became them. You've done the work, you've faced the shadows, you've purged the pain. And now the doors that were once locked are beginning to open. Not because they changed, but because you did. You've elevated beyond the reach of fear. You've healed past the grip of shame. And now you're living in a new dimension. People will feel it before they understand it. They'll sense something's different. They'll ask where you've been, but you won't need to explain. Your presence alone will tell the story. It will whisper of the nights you survived, the strength you forged in silence, the grace that wrapped around you like armor. You are not who you were. And that's the miracle. What they did to you no longer holds power over you. Because you've taken your story back. You've rewritten the ending. And it doesn't end in defeat. It ends in glory. It ends in restoration. It ends in divine alignment. You may have been left to die, but now you're living like never before. You laugh differently now, not just because something is funny, but because you remember when you forgot how to laugh. You smile because you remember when the weight was too heavy to carry joy. You dance because you remember what stillness felt like in sorrow. You move like a person who knows the light never left them. It was just hidden under all the layers life tried to bury them with. This is not your comeback. It's your becoming. You are not returning to where you were. You are advancing to where you belong. And you do so with grace, with power, with unwavering peace. Because nothing anyone did to you can take away what was already written for you. Your destiny is not fragile. It's protected. Your path is not random. It's divine. The trials didn't weaken you. They refined you. The silence didn't starve you. It fed your roots. The rejection didn't ruin you. It revealed you. And now, The version of you that's walking forward is unstoppable, not because of ego, but because of experience. You've earned this elevation, not through titles, not through approval, but through endurance. You are proof that miracles are not myths. They're people. People like you. People who were counted out, but kept going. People who were overlooked, but kept building. People who were broken, but refused to stay shattered. You are a living miracle. And now, the world will see what the divine already knew. You were never finished. This is the season where silence turns into testimony, where everything you walk through becomes evidence of the supernatural hand that never left you, not for 1 second. You thought it was over, but it was only paused. You thought you were forgotten, but you were being reserved. They assumed your name would disappear from relevance, but what they didn't understand is that you were never trying to be seen by them. You were being positioned by something higher. And now, your rise is inevitable. You've become so much more than anyone ever gave you credit for, not because of what you achieved, but because of what you survived, because of the strength you cultivated in the trenches, the peace you discovered in your own brokenness, and the way you turned pain into power without ever needing to announce it. You didn't just go through the storm, you became the calm after it. And now that you've emerged, nothing can shake the foundation you've built within. This new season doesn't require validation. It doesn't need a round of applause. The work was already done when no one was watching. Now, what's unfolding is simply the fruit of obedience, the reward for not quitting, the response to the quiet prayers and the unrecorded battles, the result of faith that held on even when hope was fading. That's what this is. It's the return on your surrender. You're no longer chasing things. Things are chasing you. Because when you're aligned, life flows differently. You attract peace. You attract purpose. You draw in everything that matches your frequency. And people start to feel it, even before they understand it. That's why the same people who laughed at your breakdown are now quietly observing your breakthrough. They sense something divine, something unshakable, and they don't know how to explain it, because it can't be explained. It has to be lived. Your presence now carries weight. Your silence speaks volumes. Your decisions are not rooted in fear, but in foresight. You move strategically. You love intentionally. You protect your space with wisdom. Because you've learned, some people weren't just unworthy of your love, they were dangerous to your destiny. And now, you don't just let anyone in. Because where you're headed, alignment matters more than attachment. This is not a time for distractions, not a time for unnecessary conversations. This is sacred ground. The soil you're walking on now was watered by your tears, fertilized by your patience, and blessed by your survival. You earned this level. You didn't cheat your way here. You didn't pretend your way in. You bled for this. You broke for this. You were buried for this. And now, you're about to bloom. Let the world misunderstand you. Let the people who left assume they were right. Their opinions are no longer relevant in the space you're stepping into. Because what's coming for you doesn't require their permission. It doesn't need their recognition. It only requires your faith. And you've got that in abundance now. You've been tested too much to still be doubting. You've endured too much to still be shrinking. You've seen too much to still play small. You've become a force of clarity in a world full of confusion. And now, you walk with revelation, with resilience, and with a renewed sense of self. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer entertain what doesn't align. You no longer engage with what disrespects your peace, because you finally know what it took to protect that peace. You fought for it. You bled for it. And now, it's non-negotiable. You don't carry people anymore. You cover them in prayer and move forward. You don't cling to what's familiar. You follow what's purposeful. You don't fear being alone. You welcome solitude as sacred space. Because it was in that solitude that you heard your real voice. The one that had been silenced by people-pleasing, dulled by survival mode, and ignored by distractions. But now that voice is leading you. You're not walking back into the world the same way. You're walking in crowned, not because you seek to rule others, but because you finally learned how to rule yourself. That's the greatest mastery. Self-mastery, emotional mastery, spiritual mastery. And now, people who once knew the old version of you no longer have access to this new level. It's not about bitterness, it's about boundaries. This isn't arrogance, it's awareness. You're no longer pretending you don't see what you see. You're no longer gaslighting your own intuition. You're no longer shrinking just to be accepted. You've realized that your presence is powerful and not everyone can hold it. And that's okay. Not everyone was designed to walk with you. Not everyone has the capacity to honor you. And now, you're done negotiating your worth for someone else's comfort. The people who left you thought they'd buried you, but they didn't realize they planted you, and you took root. Deep, divine, unshakable roots. And now that you're growing, they want to be close again. But you've learned, proximity is not the same as alignment. Some people are only interested in the light you carry, not the weight you bore to find it. And you're wise enough now to know the difference. You're not hard. You're healed. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not distant. You're discerning. And that's the gift of being left alone. You got to meet yourself. You got to study your soul. You got to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And now, you're living in that truth. Boldly, fully, unapologetically. This is not the end. This is the arrival. You didn't just survive the season. They prepared you to reign in the next. And everything you need for what's coming is already inside of you. The strength, the clarity, the discernment, the fire. It's all there. You just needed the silence to find it. And now that you have, there's no stopping what's about to unfold. Let the world see the rise. Let the whispers grow louder. Let the shadows tremble. Because you are not returning empty. You are returning whole. And the version of you they left to die is now the version they'll never forget. You were the one they never expected to rise. The one they talked about in past tense, as if your story had already ended. The one they pointed to with whispers of pity or pride, but never with understanding. You were written off, dismissed, forgotten. But that's what makes your rise so unforgettable. That's what makes this moment different from anything you've known before. Because now, you're not just surviving it, you're mastering it. This is where the shift becomes visible. Not because you forced it, but because you embodied it. The energy you walk in now is undeniable. You move differently because you know differently. You no longer respond from wounds. You respond from wisdom. And that shift, it changes everything. The people who left you assumed you would seek them again, that you would come back to ask why, to plead for closure, to chase the parts of yourself they once accepted. But you didn't, because in their absence, you became whole. You remembered how to live without their approval, and more importantly, you realized you never needed it in the first place. That version of you that relied on being seen to feel worthy, gone, buried, healed. Now, you stand in rooms they once told you you'd never enter. You command respect in spaces they said you didn't belong in. You lead with humility, but carry a strength they cannot measure. And you don't do it for them. You do it because there's something in you that refused to die. Something ancient, something sacred, something divinely persistent. You've become the person who lights up rooms without saying a word. You radiate from the soul, not from the surface. You've tapped into a kind of power that doesn't need to shout because the truth within you echoes louder than noise ever could. It's the kind of power that doesn't control, it liberates. It frees you from the weight of being misunderstood. It releases you from needing to be anything other than who you really are. This is the point where you stop hiding the parts of you that were forged in silence. You let your scars breathe. You let your voice grow deeper. You show up fully. And those who can't receive you in your wholeness, you bless them and let them go. No bitterness, no need for explanation, just peace. Because true growth is quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It simply becomes. You've become fluent in the language of loss and gain. And now you understand. Not everything that leaves your life is a loss. Some exits are breakthroughs. Some goodbyes are invitations to meet your higher self. Some endings are divine doors being shut, so you'll stop knocking on what no longer aligns with your evolution. You've learned how to release what isn't rooted in truth. And now, you're no longer accessible to what drained you. You've upgraded your standards. You've refined your circle. You don't entertain drama. You don't feed into chaos. You value silence. You protect your energy like sacred currency. Because now, you know, it's not selfish to guard your peace. It's survival. It's wisdom. It's sacred. You've stopped making excuses for others. You no longer soften your truth for comfort. You don't dilute your voice for harmony. You've stepped into a frequency that only those with clean hands and clear hearts can access. And you're okay with that. You don't need to be everyone's favorite. You only need to be faithful to your calling. You are no longer reactive. You are reflective. You take your time now. You don't rush healing. You don't chase timelines. You've learned that divine timing always outruns human pressure. You've surrendered control not as defeat, but as a form of mastery. Because surrender isn't weakness. It's alignment. It's trusting the process, trusting yourself, trusting the force that never abandoned you. And when people ask, "How did you do it?" you'll smile. Because they'll never understand the depth of your healing, the cost of your clarity, the weight of your transformation. They'll only see the result, but you'll carry the story, the sacred, private, holy story that only you and the divine truly understand. And that's enough, because not everything needs to be shared. Some miracles are too personal to post. You've become a living revelation, a message in motion, a prophecy fulfilled in real time. And what's wild is, you're just getting started. The same fire that was meant to burn you has now become your fuel. The same tears that once blurred your vision have now sharpened your focus. The same silence that once echoed with pain now hums with purpose. This isn't a temporary victory. This is a permanent shift. You're walking into territory that was always yours, but now you're ready to inhabit it. Not as a wounded soul, but as a whole one. Not with fear, but with fierce faith. Not seeking validation, but anchored in revelation. You know who you are now. You know whose you are. And nothing, no lie, no loss, no label can change that. So walk forward, not to prove them wrong, but to prove that even when life tried to write your ending, the divine was already preparing a new beginning. You are the continuation of a story they tried to end too early. You are the redefinition of what resilience looks like. You are the embodiment of what happens when grace meets grit. And now you rise, fully, finally, forever. They left you to die, but God didn't. And that made all the difference. You are the chosen one.